Hello there. Welcome back to my US 2020 presidential election forecast and tracker. I thought I would share a video with you as promised because it's been about 5 days since my initial video where I went through, primarily for the benefit of UK viewers, the way that the system works in the States. So I don't propose to cover the same ground again. I'll just jump straight into the numbers. Um, as you can see, I updated this yesterday on the 25th of October. So these numbers are actually 1 day out of date, but I don't expect they will have moved significantly over the last 24 hours. And the bottom line is that Joe Biden's projected electoral college share is unchanged at 357 versus 181 for President Trump, the incumbent. That's a lead of 176. You may well have noticed in the polls, well, in the press, that the polls have actually narrowed somewhat the last few days. And in particular, I'll just highlight the national popular vote lead, which Biden is said to have at the moment, which is 8.7%. That's down a fair amount, actually, versus last week, 1.4%. And you may well remember this is important because, as I explained before, at the moment there is an inbuilt rightward tilt in the Electoral College, and specifically in the small number of states that are likely to decide this election. There are, I think, more states this time round that are in play, so they say, than in previous cycles. However, I'm of the firm view that it's going to come down to a few states, and to be honest, Trump needs to win all of them. So where we are now is, as I mentioned last time, I built in a calculation which hypothetically assumes that the pollsters in 2016, who famously or infamously underrepresented Trump's chances in almost all cases, state by state, and overrepresented Clinton's, have done nothing or have tried but failed to correct that. Now, that is conjecture. The chances are they probably have corrected the error up to a point. However, you can view this as a worst case scenario as at the present day, if you like. And what you'll see here is that in a number of key states, which are the marginal states, which are the ones which are most likely to decide the outcome, there has been a tightening. For example, if you look at the state of Georgia, which started off trending marginally for Trump until the beginning of this month, and then went up, in fact, as high as 1.4 for Biden. It's gone down to 0.4 in the latest poll of polls by 538. If you factor in the bias, if you like, for Clinton in 2016, that state is now tied. And I think either way, that particular state is going to be very, very close, not least because it's in the South. And without wanting to get too political about it, it's been documented by others that certain, for want of a better expression, voter suppression measures are in place. So I suspect that state, at best, will be a flip for, a toss-up for Biden. Could well, in fact, go Republican. But looking at the others in the Rust Belt, Michigan, the adjusted figure down to 3.7. Pennsylvania, which you may remember from last time, is what's regarded as the tipping point state currently. So it's the state which is forecast to take Biden over the top, i.e. the state with which he can't do without. I'm highlighting the wrong one. That has actually gone down to 1.3. With North Carolina, it's as you were. That's currently tracking at 2.4 for Biden. But if you bear in mind the fact that last time Clinton's chances were overrepresented, it would actually, if that happened again, remain a Republican state. And the same also for the state of Iowa and also the Maine 2nd Congressional District. What's interesting here, actually, and I wonder whether there's a problem with the spreadsheet, is that Texas, which for the last few cycles has been one of the most solidly Republican states, has bucked the trend a little bit, because most of the battleground states in the last week or so have tightened, but that particular one has tightened the other way. The majority of the others have probably seen a slight increase in chances for Trump. This one has actually seen Trump's lead decrease to 0.4. And last time round, it actually underrepresented Clinton's chances. So based on that, it would actually be a flip for the Democratic Party. Now, there's been lots of attention on Texas. I personally don't think in the final analysis this time round that it will go Republican. However, it has been leaning Democrat increasingly the last few years. And a number of experts believe that it will certainly be competitive this time round, could actually flip Democratic in 2024. And by 2028, there's a very high probability that it will go Democrat. And if that happens, based on current demographics and trends, that would mean in presidential terms, the Democrats would be locked in California. That's not going to change, for a long, long time. New York, so that's 55 and I think 29 electoral votes respectively. If they get control of Texas, that's 38 as well. And then if you add in Florida, which is very, very tight and always has been a battleground state, that is starting to lean more left just because of demographics again, increased number of non-Cuban Hispanics in that state. That is 4 of the biggest electoral states that could well be tied up early on the Democrats in future cycles. That does not bode well for the Republican Party. If we assume for these purposes that the pollsters will be wrong by the same factor that they were in 2016, which I would stress is an assumption, in a sense is a worst case, the effect that has is that Joe Biden's lead would be 1-3-2, which is in fact unchanged from before. I've actually disregarded for these purposes what could be an anomaly with Texas. I'm still giving that for Trump, notwithstanding what I've just talked about. Again, pretty handy lead. I think what these numbers below show is that because there has been a tightening in certain key states where Biden's margin of 5, 6, 7% until recently has gone down a little bit, what it means is that it would take a smaller swing nationwide to cause the election to go for Trump. And in fact, at the moment, based on current numbers, a 6% swing across the board would do it for Trump, which was not the case five or 6 days ago when I did this. And that, again, that bears in, I think that reflects what I talked about last time, in that Trump effectively has a 3% advantage in terms of the disparity between the national popular vote and the Electoral College. So provided Biden stays above 3%, he ought to win statistically. However, as I mentioned last time, there is a rightward tilt in the key states, and these numbers here are not adjusted for the hypothetical margin of error in 2016. These are raw polling numbers as at yesterday. Pennsylvania is still the tipping point state, as we said last time. That's unchanged. But again, as I pointed out, below that, the states are very close. And so none of these should be regarded as a lock for Biden at all. In fact, Pennsylvania probably shouldn't be either. What is interesting is that when you get into the most marginal Republican states, Texas is actually the most marginal now, above Ohio, which is really unheard of. And those are the two which, if Biden could flip either of them, he will win the election. There is no question about that. That said, I don't think that will happen. However, for Trump to win this, he really needs to win all of these states. And he also needs to be targeting, probably not Michigan, but at least one Rust Belt state. So if he can't get Pennsylvania, he has to go after Wisconsin. I think Michigan is probably too far away now. If he does not win either of them, his chances are very, very low. And as mentioned last time, if Trump does not win Florida, and that could get called quite early, I doubt it, but it's on the eastern coast, where the majority of the state is in the eastern time zone. If that happens to get called early for Biden, then it is game over. Those are the main numbers that I was going to talk about. What I wanted to touch on next was the debate which was held a couple of days ago. I'm not going to go into any great details here, but one of the things that came out of that was what was an apparent slip of the tongue by Biden, where he made comments on the oil industry, and he talked about what has been seized on by the Republican Party as an apparent lack of commitment to the oil industry. What Biden has been at pains subsequently to say is that he's not saying that that industry will be targeted in, that steps will be taken to end it. It will continue for some time. What he's actually going to do is put an end to subsidies in that area, which is not a change from his stated policy, but was not expressed in the greatest of terms and has been seized upon by Trump. And really the main reason for that is that the oil industry is of particular significance in Texas, but perhaps even more so Pennsylvania, particularly with fracking. And what Trump is doing is trying to convince swing voters in Pennsylvania that their livelihoods are at risk if they vote for Biden. Biden, essentially, the history of the geography of Pennsylvania is that the Democrats are very strong in the two big cities, which are Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh, and the Republicans are much more dominant in the rural areas. And he is going after those areas in which there is a lot of petroleum industry to try to flip those voters over to him, because he is aware that that state really is a must-win for him. The other thing I was going to touch on is voter registrations. It's a curiosity of the American system when you look at it from a UK perspective, in that I think in every case but one, in every single state, you have to be registered in order to vote. And also in a majority of states, I think it's 31 or 32 states, you cannot participate in closed primary elections unless you are registered with a particular party. So over here, it would be anathema for figures to be released about how many registered Conservative voters or Labour voters there are in any given area. In the States, it's par for the course. And so it's much more followed in the media in terms of number of Republican, or as the case may be, Democratic voters that have registered. And there has been a noticeable increase, I think, which was expected, excuse me, but it is noticeable, particularly in certain swing states, that a greater number proportionally of Republican voters have registered with the Republican Party than the Democratic Party in the run-up to this. And although early voting, which has obviously been much more of a factor this time because of COVID mainly, has been strong for the Democrats, I do expect that on November the 3rd, there will be an upturn in, well, by then there will have been an upturn in Republican registrations and Republican voting. So I do think these numbers are still going to tighten. The big question is whether Trump has run out of time. The odds, if you look at the bookmakers, and I will just try to do that now. Sorry, wrong screen. I don't actually have it to hand, apologies, but what seems to have been happening the last couple of days is that Trump's lead with Trump's odds with the bookmakers have shortened. But as I mentioned before, I do think that's a function of the fact that his odds previously were very attractive, and they may well have shortened to dissuade people from voting for him. Conversely, Biden's have lengthened, but again, I think the reverse could well be true, in that that is perhaps a function of Trump's having narrowed, and those odds have then become more attractive to the casual bookmaker, to the casual punter, than they were before, because basically nobody was voting for Biden. It just wasn't really worth it. So that is the end of this particular update. I will endeavour to do another one in a few days' time, but I would welcome comments or likes as you wish. And if there is anything in particular that you would like me to cover in my next update, I hope to do one, let's say, in the next 3 or 4 days. I'd then do a final one, possibly the day before or on the actual day of the election, which is Tuesday week, 8 days away. Then please do let me know. But otherwise, I will see you next time. Thanks very much.